let's delve into it. We are looking at handling a situation when she's older, she's richer, academically inclined, or in most cases, sometimes more spiritual than him. Okay. And the reason why this topic is so dear on my heart is because especially in our African setting, we have a patriarchal setting in terms of marriage and family life. So most of the model we have seen is when the man is more accomplished and economically better than the woman. Okay. So from the medieval ages, you see that men will marry women when the women are way younger. Sometimes they are even infants, they are babies, and they are waiting for them to grow and to be handed over to them in marriage. Men are way economically better than women are. Academically, they are way ahead of the woman. And as a result of that, it is easier for the man to think that those are the circumference or those are the cardinals he needs to lead the average woman or to lead the wife. Okay. But then again, because of liberality, because of modernization, because of women empowerment, we see that the average woman is also gaining some grounds and some leveling. And as a result, there comes the confusion because for the model that the man saw, he's supposed to lead a woman he is smarter than, he's supposed to lead a woman he is richer than, he's supposed to lead a woman he is older than. But when you find yourself in that dynamic where the woman is more accomplished than you are as a man, or the woman is older than you are as a man, or the woman has higher achievements than you are as a man, how do we navigate that field? How do we go about it? Does it mean that the woman can now take the turns to leave such a home? Does it mean the man is relegated to the background? Does it mean the man begins to feel insecure? Does it mean that the man feels intimidated just because, Charlie, I don't want to get closer to this type of woman because she has her stuff together. I don't know how I'm going to lead such a woman. I don't know my value or what my value is going to be in such a dynamic. So that is why this topic is very important, so that we, the guys, can also learn and know that the fact that she's way higher than you are in this level doesn't mean that you can't have a meaningful or a successful relationship with her. And for the woman to also understand that having this achievements and this accolades doesn't mean that I can't allow the man to lead me. So how do we navigate this field or this situation? Is the reason we are having this dialogue, is the reason we have brought two honorable people among us to help us navigate this playing field. So let me not waste time. We will save the profile and all of those things later. I want to hand over to Jemima to introduce our guest, then we jump from there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Godwin. So without wasting much time, I'd want to invite Mr. Ken Fifi Amwa to tell us something brief about himself and something brief, just an introduction of the topic we are about to have. Mr. Ken Fifi Amwa, please can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, please.
That's Jemima.
Yes, please.
I hope my video is also on as well.
Yes, your video is on.
Let me see. Okay. Hold on. Yeah, so thank you very much, Gordon and the team for the invitation. Let me see what I can have my face come brighter. Okay, I think that's better. Yeah, so thank you very much, Gordon. Thank you very much, Jemima, the team, for inviting me to share some of the things that we'll have. So as rightly said, my name is Ken Fifi Amwa. I attend Trinity Baptist Church. I'm the impact leader, impact ministry leader. I really enjoy intellectual discussions like this, where all of us can meet and share our thoughts and our opinion. I also double up as a tax consultant, chartered accountant, working with EY. So that's an introduction about myself. And hopefully, once the discussion goes on, I hope that you will hear a lot from me. So thank you very much, Maima.
Thank you, Mr. Amwa. Barrister Irachua Asaba Pencil. Please, can you hear me? Are you there?
Right. Thank you. Good morning. Sorry, I was unable to
Okay.
unmute my name. Yes.
Okay.
Can you see me?
Yes, I can see you. We
Great.
can see
I don't know
you.
why I can't see myself. Okay.
Oh.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, especially to the team and Mr. Amo as well. My name is Iradra, like you said. I practice law for a living. I'm currently an in-house lawyer for a fintech. So I'm in the financial technology space. I'm trying to inch my way a bit more into IT related, contexts, conversations, industry generally. But I'm also particularly interested in this gender, relationship, marriage conversation because I think we've been robbed for a long time in terms of understanding what the dynamics really are or should be, at least. So it's always a privilege, it's always humbling, to get the opportunity to share some thoughts on these topics. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Barrister Irajo Asaba Pencil. Please, can I shorten it to AJ like Godwin?
Please feel
Because
free. I don't know why you're mentioning the whole name. Feel free.
Mr. Amwa, can I call you Mr. Amwa, or do you want me to mention your full name?
I just call me Ken. I prefer
just
my
call you.
first name. Yeah.
Okay, so Ken then. Okay, so then let's dive straight into the conversation. Okay. So when we talk about older, richer, smarter, does that mean that the woman then should lead the home because maybe she's older? When it comes to finances, she's richer. And then when it comes to academic qualifications, she has more than the man. Does that mean that she has the right to lead the home then? Ken, please, I'll take
Okay.
it first.
Sure. So before the discussion goes on, I wanted to state, if you watch National Science and Maths quiz, they will call it preamble.
Yeah.
Some people also say precedence. That
Mm.
in my reading and in my experience and in my interactions with several people, I've come to understand that there are various narratives of life. When I say various narratives, people have their own story, people have their own experiences. So sometimes even advice can be a bit biased because my advice is based on my experience or based on my narrative. And I'll give a few examples. So, for instance, I'm fancy, and I've heard people say that fancy men are very lazy, so don't go ahead to marry a fancy man. Somebody's bias, somebody's narrative. Somebody also will say that I married a fancy man and it's the best experience I've ever had. Now you are faced with a suitor who is fancy. A says that I married a fancy man, he's very lazy. I advise me to go for a fancy man. B says I also married a fancy man, it's the best experience ever. He's very responsible, he takes care of all my needs. Now you stand in the middle. The two narratives, two experiences, two biases, which one do you take? So I just want to lead the preamble that in as much as we discussing several things on experiences, on biases, on knowledge, wisdom that we always have, at the end of the day, I believe most of us on the panel or on this group are Christians. So if you're a Christian, at the end of the day, it still boils down to discernment and having a conviction of what God is telling you in a particular area. If you're a non-Christian, to out there, they call something intuition, gut feeling, instincts, or inner witness. You can also follow that path if you're not Christian to make a decision. So I just wanted to lay that foundation to realize that despite everything that we'll say, there will still be exception and biases. Now back to the question in terms of when a woman is richer, older, wiser than the man. So one psychologist puts it this way, and out there they call something hypergamy. I don't know whether you have heard of that before, that most women, and again, I'm a consultant, so my words are very cautious. I use the word most women. I didn't say women, so that somebody come and say, hey, I'm an exception. Most women marry up. When they say they marry up, that means that they marry somebody who is higher on the ladder in terms of socio-economic class or status. And most men also look for opportunities upwards. Now, the example the psychologist gives is that a man is working at ABC company. He's paid 5,000 cedis a month. He's given a car. He has a house. He lives at Def Traco. His fuel is paid for him. This man is not complaining. He's happy with his job. He goes to job happy. He tells his friends how he's excited about his job. Then all of a sudden, he gets an offer. Now, the offer comes in, they're going to pay you 20,000 cedis. From Def Track, we are moving into Trazaco. And for the fuel that this company is paying, you're going to give you twice as much as they're giving you. And we're also going to give you a bonus that the current company is not giving you. As a man, his mind is wide logically towards gravitating upwards in life. He will consider the opportunity. Nothing has happened with his current employment. No fighting, nothing. He's happy. But because an opportunity of a higher status presents itself, his mind is wide. If he does not take the opportunity in his current place, if anything happens, you make a comparison. Oh, this opportunity came, I didn't go. If I taken this opportunity. So most men are wired logically towards advancing in life, where most men also are wired to be hypergamous in terms of go for an opportunity that is higher. And again, those who are Christians and on this platform, there are several cases in the Bible. You can look at Ruth and King Ahasuerus. And Ruth came from a very poor family. She was an orphan, and one opportunity came for her to audition. I want to use the word audition for the role of a wife. She went in there because she realized that by getting to that environment, she would get liberation for herself, her uncle Mordecai, and perhaps the Jews. You can also look at that as Esther and King Ahasuerus. You can look at Ruth and Boaz. Ruth was a widow, went into a far land, met Boaz. The Bible said that he was a man of influence and affluence. I mean, Naomi even advises Ruth that by getting to this man, you can get some kind of liberation. And there are several examples that I'll bring in later on as the discussion goes on. But I think coming back to the main point of the discussion, when the narrative changes, and in life, we don't always have the narrative society gives. When a narrative changes, what do you do? I think I'll just highlight on one point so that my other panelists can also share her position on that. So the first one is that the man may likely, again, I said I'm a consultant, so my words are very careful, so nobody can attack me. The man may likely have self-esteem issues. Self-esteem issues in the sense that society has programmed us to have a particular thinking, a particular way of deriving our understanding of things. I remember I lived with a relative some time ago, and he would tell me that the wife earns even 5 to 10 times more than him. I mean, he tells me that. And when he goes to work and people are talking, they tell him that they know the house he's living was bought by their wife. It's like, so people are saying that I can't buy this house. So sometimes unconsciously, there's this self-esteem issues that come in. Perhaps you are driving your wife's car and some friends will be talking, nah, abema pa na uchu wife car, wankasa utuminto car. Sometimes akwawe and the wife nation no oni hwe oni foko and ko ni fia and the wife nation no. So the first one may be self-esteem issues where your environment, when you are trying to defy the order of society, people begin to look down on you. Perhaps you may be wearing some suits that your own friends know that you cannot buy it. It's a Charlie, wife body or your pounds, you thought that Joe dear, and you can't even defend yourself that you bought it. Charlie, me and I tell Charlie, when you say you need more, we there any more pound. It's a way there, Charlie. So the biggest hurdle will be self-esteem. How to overcome that self-esteem from and sometimes when you have a need or something unconsciously because you are not there, you may have to ask your wife for support. And sometimes, even when your friends come in, they actually say, Charlie, I need support. So can you ask your wife for me? Unconsciously, they're making you know that you cannot provide. And they know that it's your wife that you ask. So there'll be some subtle jabs here and there, subtle jabs. For instance, you go to church and your wife is rather the leader, the deacon or the elder, and you're the one who is relegated. And people see these things unconsciously. So the major hurdle, we'll look at that hurdle. Like I said, I want to speak, and my panelists will speak, and we look at other points. It will be self-esteem, how to overcome the self-esteem, how to still stand up head straight, knowing that your wife is a CFO, a global CFO, original CFO, comes on TV, is on radio, is in the newspapers, and as my cousin will say, you are an assistant clerk in a small firm around the area where you are taking instructions, and your wife calls the shots, and your wife has a V8, and your wife has bought you a small car. So I mean, all these unconscious biases that come in. So the first thing is the self-esteem issue that you may have to deal with. So I will just land here. As time goes on, I'll also reflect on how to overcome this self-esteem issue that is most likely to be the number one hurdle, where the narrative is the opposite. Thank you, Jemima.
Thank you, Ken. AJ, what can you add? Ken has opened the floor for us. What can you add to this question?
Okay. I think I have to be unmuted every time you ask me. So forgive me when I delay a few seconds before. I think those are useful thoughts. My disclaimer also will be that I think life must be lived within some boundaries of certain virtues or values or rules. So my disclaimer is that my bias is towards the Christian worldview. So I may not necessarily quote scripture, but a lot of my thoughts, a lot of my opinions are specifically guided by what my belief, teaches me. So the first thing, I think this question has a theoretical side, which is what should be the ideal versus what the practical side may end up becoming. And I think Ken has touched pretty beautifully on the practical side. The theoretical side for me is that, and I've said this, I think, on a podcast with Godwin sometime last year or the year before. The idea of leadership in marriage, very specifically in marriage, I don't mean the man and the woman generally. I mean specifically in marriage, the idea of leadership is one of a calling, in my opinion. It is one of an office. It is not one necessarily of competence. So it's just like faith. When God, I mean, they say, come as you are, but the idea is not for you to remain as you are. So when I say that leadership is one of a calling, I think God calls men into leadership for the purposes of order. So I always use this example when God says that if you want to follow, I mean, when Jesus says, if you want to follow me, leave your mother and your father, or he actually in certain translations says that you must hate your mother and your father if you want to follow me. That hatred is not in the sense that we understand it. It's just a question of order. He's saying that if ever there came a time where there was a conflict between what you want to do because you follow me versus what your parents desire of you, put me before your parents. It's a question of order. Or when he says, Jacob I have loved, Esau I have hated, it's simply a question of order. Who should supersede who? So I don't think leadership is a question of who's richer, who's more competent, who has been to school a bit more. I think in a setting of marriage, because you have two individuals coming from possibly completely different backgrounds who may have very different opinions about different things, one must definitely override the other at some point. The two must agree that if there was ever a time where there was a clash in opinion, I will subsume mine under yours and trust that you are leading the ship where it should go. So that's the first thought for me, that as a man, if you subscribe at least to the Christian worldview, then what we're saying is you're a leader not necessarily because of competence. And again, when I say that, I say it with the asterisks that it doesn't mean play that role, sorry to say, in foolishness. But you're coming to leadership as an office which carries its own graces and responsibilities and whatnot, as a matter of calling, not because of your competence. Now that's the theoretical side. And before I even move to the practical side, I must say that I must be quick to say to the women, I'm not suggesting then that go and choose any, sorry to say, fool and say that it's a question of office, not of competence, because once you submit yourself, there's no question about whether whether to subsume your choices under that leader you have chosen or not. But the second leg of it, which is the more practical side, is once we have agreed that leadership is a question of office and calling, then we must come to a certain understanding that, the theory is nice until you are faced with the day-to-day nitty-gritties of it, which is, I think, the angle Ken took it from. You're in a house where the man's understanding of leadership is, I must provide everything. So what becomes your essence in that home where you don't exactly have much to give? Or perhaps you do, but the woman can do more or doesn't even need you to provide at all. It can cause challenges that if the two parties are not ready to address, then they shouldn't be putting themselves in that dynamic at all. You must be able to come to a place as individuals and as a team where you identify that these are the problems these issues will cause. So one, if it is age that is in question, I mean, think about it. Imagine that you are working in an office, your boss, you have a good relationship, there's no friction or anything, but he's your boss or she's your boss. And then one day you find out you're about 3 years older than your boss. Something in your brain will shift. Like something will make you say, auntie dada I was even older than him. It may not change the respect you accord that person, but it shifts something in your mind. So if two people decide that the woman is older, but they're going to remain in this dynamic, they must recognize that it will come with dynamic or peculiar challenges that another couple may not face. So the man comes back from work, he kicks his shoes onto the floor. If you haven't overcome the temptation of, when I'm older, I deserve more respect, then automatically your mind is thinking, this, I'm even older than you. You're like my little brother. Why should I be picking after you? Which may explain why sometimes women want someone who's a bit older, so that the respect they need to accord comes a little more naturally, because in this part of the world, age automatically means they deserve more respect for whatever reason. So yes, the theory is there, but the practical side means it will pose certain specific challenges that may be peculiar to you as a couple. And if you decide to go into that dynamic, knowing what you know, that she's richer, she has more influence, blah, 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 then come to the table with honesty, with the challenges it will bring your relationship, and agree that, yes, these challenges will come, but we want to proceed. And when these things rear their head, this is how we will choose to approach them. Those would be my thoughts, at least initial thoughts on whether a woman should take up leadership. It's a complete no for me, if you ask me. But of course, there are nuances that we can discuss as we go on.
Okay, thank you. These are very great insights from both of you. But then I want to ask from Ken, so looking at the side of the men, what do you think men can do to overcome these obstacles? Because like you explained, these things sometimes come naturally. You are probably a self-empowered man. You have your thoughts to yourself. You tell yourself you're not going to be intimidated by your woman's level of success or his status in the society, even if it happens that both of you are not at par and she's higher. How can a man overcome those obstacles that might come a bit naturally, how does a man overcome that?
Very well. So, before I go ahead, I think I want to comment. I don't know, in other places they call it convener, or your leader or your president or whoever, Godwin, for having brilliant panelists on this discussion. I'm a panelist, but I myself I'm enjoying what the other panelists are saying. So Godwin,
That's
very,
lovely.
very
Thank you.
brilliant on that. So Jemima, you asked a very important question, and I want to leverage on what AG said in respect of the office of the man. And again, if you go on that bias as Christians or those who prescribe to the Christian faith, it's an office that cannot be relegated, regardless of the dynamics of old, rich, or smarter. It's an office. Now, coming back to your question, when there's the ideal situation in the practical, how do men, or how should men deal with this particular situation when they find themselves in it? Now, I talked about the self-esteem issues. So again, when you are going into it, you know it from day one that these are the dynamics I'm going to face in this marriage, because the woman has more in respect of some key elements. So you know it from day one. So to the one that you are going inside, I think AJ spoke about mindsets. You must have a mindset that people may tease you, people may make fun of you, people may say all manner of things, but your heart is fixed, your heart is firm, that this is my choice, this is my decision, this is what I want, and I'm going to go through thick and thin. I'm going to go through the fires, I'm going to go through the waters, because this is what I want. How I got to meet Godwin was that he made a very important point, which I'm doing a research on. It's called conviction. And I think it was this same thing in our church where they were making a comment that you might enter into a relationship where there isn't so much chemistry or love, but at the end of the day, it's just the two of you understand each other and all of that. And God make the point that there must be a basic element of love. There should be some level of attraction going in. And I'm going to make that reference to conviction. When Jacob met Rahel, the Bible says that he kissed her and shouted with a loud cry. What it means is that Jacob had got to a certain level in his life that when he met Rahel, he knew that it was her. Something in him just triggered beyond doubt that this is the woman I have to marry. That even when she was giving Leah for 7 years and later realized that it was wrong, he had to go to Rachel, he spent 14 years because he just knew. There was a time where the Bible says that Mary met Elizabeth and the baby kicked in her womb. I mean, there's that level of conviction where you just know that regardless of society, regardless of your own confusion, this is my decision. So before that step of marriage, you must have the conviction that this is what I'm going to do. These are some of the things that I may face. Those of you who are social media friends, you see a lady in Nigeria called Regina Daniels with Nedwanko. People make fun of her that you married a man who can be your grandfather. You can see that she's chilling. She knows what she went for. She knew before going in that these are some of the things that may come in. Therefore, I'm fixed to it. You see a whole man of strolling. She will come back and come and sit in a private jet or a yacht or having some night into shit. I'm still enjoying my life. You say anything you want to say. I made my decision. I knew I made my decision. So the first one is that you must have the mindset that I'm going into it, and these are the possible things that may come in, but I have a fixed mind. The second thing is understanding, which I think AJ also made mention of it. There should be an understanding that despite her being older than me, the woman also, despite he being younger, there may sense that I may have to rewire my brain to know that it's a reverse angle or reverse position. If the woman is richer, which I have experienced this before when I schooled in America. So actually, I thought it was the norm, which I did learn, which is helping me though. Because in the family that I stay with, the man was cleaning, the man was cooking, the man was bathing the kids, the man was feeding them, was doing everything possible. So I thought it was a normal thing, because then I go to realize that, oh, because the woman was like 5 times more than, so he had to balance it. But I'd already learned it. The man was changing diapers, was taking the kids to school, was bringing them back. I thought it was a normal. But regardless of that, something I've still learned regardless. So there must be a balance on the side of the man, because the woman is a CFO, she's attending meetings. I've seen areas where the man goes to drop the woman at work in the morning and goes to pick her back in the evening, because he may not be so much, have so much time demand like the woman has. So in terms of responsibility, by the time she comes home, and if you were a teacher and perhaps you close by 12 or 2 o'clock, and she is a corporate woman, she's coming about 5 or 6, you don't wait for her to come and cook. Even if you don't know how to cook, you can learn and balance those things. So there should be a mutual understanding between the two of you that our narrative is different. Our narrative is not the norm. How are we going to make this work? And once you get the conviction that you are going to make this work regardless of whatever comes, then the understanding comes and the maturity comes in. AJ made a good example, which in practice can be different. I've heard those cases where when a man starts misbehaving unconsciously, the man says, I mean, so crowd, I'm back and forth. This man is behaving like a child. Sometimes, you see, there's something called confirmation bias in psychology. It may have equally happened with a younger, it may equally happen with an older man, but because it's an older man, your biases are confirmed to just accept that narrative. Again, too, as all this is, but the fact the narrative is different, your biases tend to just align. That is it because I'm older. But if the man was older, you'd have tolerated because it was normal. That's the normal narrative. So you must understand that our narrative is different. From day one, we must sit together and realize that we are going to make this work come what be. We are going to have an understanding between ourselves. We are going to have the balance. The woman must also have the understanding that she's not going to push things so much for people to know that she's the boss. If she has to allocate some of her salary to the man. I mean, I live with a family where, and it's amazing. The woman has a salary go to the man every month. And you wonder, at the time that the man used the money to take off his family in Ghana and all of that, but she understands, and that's why you see that conviction comes in. Is this somebody I really love? Is this somebody I know that I want to? Is this somebody that I'm settling with? Is this somebody? When that first point of contact, the conviction, the love is there, the rest can actually be worked on. And at times when I stay with them, the man runs everything. If you don't take time to know that the woman is behind the scene, you would actually not know, because they bend it in such a way that how the people should see that is the man who is paying for stuff. But if the woman too also unconsciously understands that I'm the one, so when we go out, I'll pay the bills, and people will pick these things up. So first, yes, they should have the conviction before marriage, and in marriage there should be that continuous consciousness of understanding and maturity to make things work. So I think I'll end here, Jemima.
Thank you. Thank you, Ken. These insights are very good. And I wanted him to talk on the side of the men and then it will talk on the side of the women, but he has handled all. So let's move on. So, AJ, what do you think are some things to consider before dating or marrying?
Oh, generally?
Yes, generally.
That's that's an interesting question. I'm sure you know what my number one answer is. If I had to ask you to guess, because you sat in a summit, I went on and on and on about purpose,
Yeah.
and I think that single concept has a way of answering even some of these questions about age and finances and whatnot. I think if the idea of marriage is supposed to be a combination of individual forces and individual energies. So if you're on your way to, say, Tamale, and you reckon that bringing this person on board will make your journey to Tamale faster, it makes sense to bring them on board. If you're bringing them on board and they are going in the opposite direction, and it starts to become a tug of war as to whether we should go north or go south, you're better off alone. So I always say that the number one thing, it sounds like a very abstract concept, but really, if you're going to partner your life with anybody, one of the first things you should be looking out for is, what am I called to do? Where am I going with my life? How do I intend to get there? What do I need to get there? And then when somebody comes your way, you're looking out for, where's this person going? What do they believe in their lives? How they intend to get there? Sometimes those questions don't have answers readily, but you know for sure that this person is going somewhere. They have what elements of what I need to hasten or to ease up my journey. And I have something or certain qualities and certain traits or certain skills that may ease up their journey. But for whatever it's worth, we are going in the same direction. So let me be quick to say, I don't subscribe to this idea that it is the man who has a purpose or a vision and it is the woman who comes in to help. I don't like going down this road because it ends up being a rabbit hole and it's winding, but let me hazard a summary of it and hope that it's understood the way I intended to be understood. So I always try to explain that this idea that the man was given the dominance and the authority to rule and reign in Genesis 1 I think it's a flawed understanding of what that text says. Some people even argue that there's a contradiction between the creation account in Genesis 1 and 2, because in Genesis 1 it says he made them male and female and then gave them dominion to rule and reign, etc. And then in Genesis 2 he now formed the man and then later formed the woman. I know this is not mainstream theology, and I know that it may take a bit more explaining to make the point, but fundamentally I always say that in Genesis 1, in fact, when you look at the account of creation in Genesis 1 and 2, there are 3 different words for the creation of human beings. In Genesis 1, you will find that the word used there is for the creation of the soul. So the male and the female soul were created in Genesis 1. In between 1 and 2, you will find that scripture says that God could not find a man to till the land, the earth. And so he formed the body of the man and put that soul he had created in Genesis 1 in that body. And then later on, he realizes in that physical consciousness, it's not good for the man to be there alone, because by then, remember the male and female soul had already been formed and put in that body. So God puts him to sleep. He doesn't fetch clay and create male and female again. He puts him to sleep, takes out the female soul and puts it in a different body. I know it's whining and technical, but I'm saying all of that to say that the idea that a woman comes in to ease up the man's life so that he can go and do purpose, I think it's a very flawed understanding of what the account is. And it has implications for things like marriage, because if you think that your wife's role is just come and take care of the small things like cooking, washing, taking care of the kids, so that you go and make money, you go and chase a purpose, then in choosing a spouse, you're looking for a cook, you're looking for a nanny, you're looking for maybe a driver for your kids. That's what you look out for as a man. And as a woman, you're also now probably looking, who can make my life comfortable? I guess that's why a lot of the young ladies now just want money. Who can make my life comfortable? Who can let me travel around, fund my life with no sense of purpose and no sense of direction for themselves? So all of that is I know it's technical, and if you don't agree or didn't understand, you can disregard it. I said all of that simply to say, I think the call to live a purposeful life goes to both a man and a woman, both the male and the female. And so if you have that understanding, when you're choosing somebody in the journey of life is less about how their body looks necessarily, and whether they can cook well and all of, I mean, those things matter for the day-to-day living. So let's not disregard it. That's not my point. But if your mindset is, I'm here for a very short amount of time, I'm here to do ABCD, I need to get ABCD done. I mean, I turned 33 this year. And when I think about it, I get palpitations because I remember when I was turning 18. And I remember when I felt like I'm suddenly an adult, like, yes, bring life on. But now at 33, I'm wondering, where has the last 10, 12 years of my life gone? Can I say that I have, if I had to give account for my life, I mean, Jesus died, finished everything he had to do at age 33. If I was called today, would I have enough to say that my life was of some use? You know, those things plague my mind. And so when I hear that question, yes, I know what people want to hear. I know they want to hear, choose somebody who's God-fearing, choose somebody who is teachable. Those things are true. But you will keep having a clash if you are not going somewhere and you've not chosen somebody who can go with you, and somebody who aligns in their thinking, in terms of finances, in terms of family life. Those conversations are crucial things. Those are things you should be looking out for when you're choosing somebody. And then when you have someone who, fits your physical specs and has all those other sweet and nice things, you add it on as the cherry on the cake. But really, if you ask me, I think these core things should be non-negotiables. And of course, then you can subsume what their belief systems are, and how they see themselves, and where they are going, what they believe in, who they are accountable to. All those things will still fall under purpose if you have a very solid understanding of what this life means and what you're supposed to be making of it. And then the romantic side of the relationship, where because you're aligned and because you know where you're going, and your two is better than one, then you can enjoy each other. And in the daily nitty-gritties, there's the comfort and friendship and camaraderie, which typically people rather look for first when they are choosing a spouse.
Wow. AJ, thank you. Thank you for this perspective. We are so grateful. So to Mr. Ken, now we want to ask, how can a couple manage financial transparency and power balance when the woman earns significantly more? I remember, so the conversation that was had at church, it bottled down to the fact that even if your woman is earning more, it doesn't matter whether the left is earning or the right is earning. It all comes to the body to enjoy, right? But then the women went like, no, they can't trust their men with their finances. They can't trust their men with their money. They are not going to do a joint account and all of that. And I felt that it really brought a lot of thinking in mind. So how can a couple manage financial transparency and power balance when the woman is earning significantly more? And I mean, you can also tie it down around, are men really the providers, or both of them are supposed to be providing? So you can work around those angles for us.
You had a lot of things in your questions: transparency, disclosure, financial management, and all of that. So I'll try and handle them little by little. And I think at the beginning, AJ said something about theory and practical. If you know Prince Amwabin, when Prince Amwabin lost his bank, he said that a friend came to visit him and told him that, you know what, Daniel went through the same thing, went through the lions, then he came out. Joseph also went through prison and all of that, he came out. And Jesus Christ also was beaten, so don't worry about that and all of that. I mean, in his pain, he took it. He said some few months later, this guy's car was stolen, and the guy could not contain himself. Then he called him. You remember, Daniel went through it, Joseph went through it, and Jesus also went through it. So there's the theoretical aspect, there's a practical. A friend of mine is a motivational speaker, always inspiring people, telling them that it doesn't matter what happens. When the man passed, nobody could console him. He was so broken he himself, he couldn't console himself. And I remember in a certain platform, I asked the question that assume that you're in a, I'll answer your question, but I just want to give a preamble. Assume you are in a relationship and your partner needed a kidney. You gave the kidney to your partner. Then soon afterwards, issues came in and your partner broke up with you and moved on to marry a different person. What would you do? And I remember one answer vividly. It says, what would I do, or what do you think I would do? Because it's not happened. So what I do is different from what I would think I would do at the moment. Maybe I'll tell you what I would think I would do now, but when it actually happens, what I'll do may be different. So in as much as we are talking about all these nice things, there's the theoretical aspect, there's the practical aspect when it comes to. So practically, as you mentioned, when I was much younger, we used to be something I used to ask a lot, that should a couple have joint accounts? Should a man know the wife's salary? Should the wife know the man's salary? And I used to ask this question at work a lot. Sometimes I'll go to work as early as 6 a.m. Work starts at 8, and I'll go to have one-on-one with my bosses to hear their perspectives. I remember one of our colleagues who married very early would tell her husband her salary, her bonus, everything. Once we get paid, she sent her husband a text and everything. And one of our bosses came and said, hey, young guys, don't listen to what this girl is saying. She's fresh in marriage. I remember I told my wife I had some money. The following day I went, my wife says, oh, let's change the fridge. Let's go and buy curtains. Let's do this. He said, but this fridge has been there all this while. It's been functioning. This curtain has been there. So once they know your finances, they come up with ideas. And I also asked another boss, what do you think? He says, Ken, you are a calm man. Me, my wife knows my salary. My wife knows my bonuses, but I'm the man. I still demand what I want to do with my salary. She cannot dictate what I have to do. And I go to another boss, say, can women have a lot of ideas when you know your salary and your bonus and all of that? You start making demands and all of that. So at the end of it, I realized that their narratives and perspectives were different. There's a man in my old church who also claims that the wife manages all his finances, his salary, his bonus, everything is handled by the wife. He doesn't know anything that is happening. So his jargon is my wife, my wife. If he needs money, he goes to ask his wife for money that he has given to the wife. So you see, the narratives are different. When it comes to joint accounts, I live with a couple that had a joint account. I also have experience of people when they have a joint account and they realize that either there's a spirit withdrawing the money, you don't know where it's going. So again, there are different narratives in respect of transparency. I'll give the theoretical view, what I think should happen, and I'll give areas of practicality. Coming to transparency and disclosure, again, you know the person that you have chose. You knew the values of the person before you chose the person. So if you really trust the person and you believe that this person I have chosen carries the same values that I have and would understand that with finances comes responsibility and with finances comes management, then in my opinion, I believe there should be transparency from day one in terms of how much each earns and each brings in, the bonuses and all of that. I actually believe that. I remember Pastor K had an example that when some husbands have a phone call, all they say is because they are trying to hide something from the wife. Their wife can't go through their phones. Their wife can't check things. And I had a friend with me. He said, Ken, I mean, you can check my phone. I mean, read all the messages. There's nothing in there. Check my so again, it depends on who you are sure you have married. You didn't marry your enemy. You didn't marry somebody who is wicked. You marry somebody you have studied, you trust, you are convicted. If that is your conviction, there should be transparency. There should be honesty. If you believe that this money that you are going to disclose to her, she understands that's for the management of the family, and you know before you are proposing to her marriage that she will not blow your money on luxury and all of that, that thing should happen. Joint account, again, there are different perspectives. I hear that a couple should have one account, A puts in this, B puts in this, or do you mean joint accounts where both salaries goes in? Again, there are various perspectives, which be what works between the two of them based on understanding and mutual respect. Now, going into the practicality. Again, I don't know. Some people think that, again, and this at my workplace full of intellectuals. Oh, this guy will say, me, I mean, come aside and no, not omedi misika. So again, does it go to the narrative that a man should not spend a woman's money and the woman should be the one spending the man's money all the time? Again, as you also realized as the leader, is he also the main provider when the woman will be earning more? Okay, my perspective, the two shall become one. Again, my perspective, two is better than one. Again, my perspective, can two work together almost three until they agree or unless they agree? Again, coming back to my same perspective, when the two become one, they become one in all things, in finances, in thinking. That's what AJ talked about purpose. I had wanted to answer the question because I love the question much. And it was Gordon who threw me back to different aspects. One of the things that may have seemingly delayed me in the context of a societal timing of marriage is purpose. I was so much keen on that. Like, I met one lady, we had a discussion. She told me that she doesn't like people. She doesn't like going out there. She wants to be by herself. And my ministry is people. People are visiting me all the time. I'm speaking at places. I want you to be behind me, going around the places. I want you to enjoy what I'm doing. I want you to be equally happy. I want you to also speak to people as I speak to. And as I just said, pretty. She has all the stats that, again, most men may want. But that point was so key to me that after all of this, am I going to be the only one talking to people? When people come and visit me, will she frown her face and go out there? I want her to be equally excited that we are in this together. We are inspiring people. We are charging people. One lady also told me that I feel so high for her because I was telling her that, you know what, based on where I am, we'll go to cocktail together, we'll go for dinner programs together, we'll do this together. So, say, hey, and I mean to me, she checking herself out there. Charlie, baby, the people who are around you, I cannot chat with them. We are not on the same page. So she gradually began to distance herself, and later she confined a pastor there. Charlie, so I just had to drift on the ear of people. I think for me it was very key in making a decision. We're on the same page. We understand each other. When I'm preaching, she's equally excited. It's not, and then again, this lady I spoke about, when I'm preaching, she has stomach ache. I mean, somebody that I am. You should be informed, passionate. That's where we are going anyway. So just by the side, back to Godwin's question. So yes, theoretically, there should be transparency, there should be disclosure. Now, practically, again, narratives. An old man that I met told me that when he got married initially, he had the same expectations, joint account, disclosure. And an older man at the workplace told him that, and later he came to realize that what the man was saying is true. So back to my foundation, you knew who you married, you knew the discussions you had before you got married, you knew the person's elements and temperament and all of that. Once you are assured of this, I think you shouldn't hide anything. And theoretically, yes, the pastor says that they were naked before each other, meaning that they're naked before each other, naked in all other ways as well, including their salary and all that. Practically, it seems the narrative is different because sometimes, again, practically different narratives. When the man sees that the woman earns high, so many ideas. I want to start this business. That's a kanashi. But she knows at the end of the day, the woman is still going to get 100,000. After the 100,000, some loose 20K is there. Because I budget with the woman. There can be that element of manipulation and abuse. Some women too who may be fashionistic or may have lots of money. When they say the man is earning a lot, oh, I want to buy this. I want to buy that. I want to buy this. Again, it comes back to dialogue, communication. So that is why this program is not only good for there's pre-marital counseling and there's pre-relationship counseling as well. So this can be pre-relationship counseling, people to know what is good for them before they enter a relationship. And even afterwards, I still think that there should be some programs like this for people in marriage or in relationship to continuously renew their mind on certain things that they thought before or things that should reassure them of what they are in marriage or relationship. I'll give you one example before I conclude. So in America, the family I live with had this young couples fellowship, and they had all married crafts. All of them were crafts. I mean, they all married crafts. So when they meet, and my auntie told me that Ken, when I married your uncle and having known him as Joshua and all of that, a later on when we got married, I was seeing some behavior. I was like, ah, so this is the Joshua's guy that I was seeing all the time, leading prayer meetings and doing all of that. But when I joined the couples group, I realized that Ken started will be. So these meetings give you reassurances of things that you keep on have to do to stay up the relationship or the marriage. So yes, my points or my opinion is that there should be transparency, there should be disclosure. The exceptions is that if it doesn't work and you have to go other ways that is mutually agreed, that's the best. But theoretically, ideally, biblically, I think there should be transparency and disclosure in everything. Otherwise, when it comes like that, disappointment and short comes in. My boss was telling me that later I realized that the wife was sending money to the parents without him knowing, or the man is building a house somewhere without it. And once this kind of trust comes, it begins to affect so many things. So yes, my opinion or my position is that there should be transparency all around. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ken. I had to go out briefly, so Godwin took over for me. Thank you. So our time is almost up, and before that, AJ, I want to ask you one question. Then we summarize everything with that before we move on to our next activity. So, with what society says about women of high status, what can women do? Is it that women should dim their light so that, because there's this saying that as a woman, you have to be at a certain place so that men don't get intimidated by your success? What can women do so that it doesn't mean like they're all over the place in quotes and they are still fulfilling God's purpose?
That's a difficult question to answer. I have a very big problem with this word society and how I've seen a funny meme that says society what society, they say something is just pressure from our ancestors, pressure from dead people. It's, for me, I always say that we are all here for the first time. Everybody is living this life for the first time, at least in the consciousness we are in. If you are Mormon or there's a group that believes that people, everybody's life here is a result of their previous life, blah, blah, blah. That's fine. Even if that is true, the point is in this consciousness, who you are, the family you've been born into, the life you're living now, it's the first time you're living it. Each of us is confused in some area of our lives. We haven't all figured it out. Everybody has something that is not, like, they can't see the clear path for some area of their life. Maybe for one person it is marriage, maybe for another person it's finances and how to increase their financial independence, maybe for another person it's just basic relationships. They don't know how to keep a friendship. For whatever it's worth, we are all figuring it out as we go. So this idea of people coming together, calling themselves society, and wanting to dictate people's lives for them, like, you live your life like this, you don't do this, because that is my choice for myself, is one of the most absurd things for me. Like, I struggle to understand how you haven't figured your life out, but somehow you figured mine out enough to want to insist that I live it a particular way. It's a very absurd thinking for me, and I've seen a funny meme or something that says society says be authentic, and then in another frame the same society says yes, but not like that. I mean, pick a side, but let's remove this idea of who is society really when you pin it down to identifiable persons. We can't point anybody, because Godwin, as he's sitting there, isn't telling me to live my life this way. Jemima isn't telling me that. Ken isn't telling me that. But somehow I feel an unspoken pressure to live my life a certain way because I think Godwin, Jemima, and Ken are looking at me and are thinking a certain way. Even if it's true, let them think a certain way. What matters is, are you living in line with what you're supposed to be doing and where you're supposed to be going? If you have a set of values you live your life by, are you staying true to those values? If you believe in a deity, if you believe in a God, are you living your life in a way that is pleasing to him? Or I don't want to say it because I don't want to encourage a deity that is an it, but for whatever it's worth, when you assess your life and where it's going and what you're doing with it in terms of your choices, what you're choosing for yourself, for the people around you, how you're using the resources you have, your time, your money, your emotions, your intellect, when you assess those things, are you spending your life in a way that is satisfying to you and to the person who called you to that life? That is what matters. I hear a lot of people say, in fact, not so long ago, there was a video of a pastor saying, you, as a woman, you can't be too flashy or you can't be too a certain show too much because you won't get a man to marry you. You see, the truth is, I hear what he's saying, and it is true. If you're just looking for a husband, then he's right. If it's just any man you want, then he's right. If you want a man who can take who you are as a person, who can who is not shaken in himself because of who you are, who you can become or will become, or who you God has made you to be. If you're looking for a man who is stable and can be a solid pillar for you, then by all means disregard what that man says, because yes, you can find a husband who is fine as long as you are beneath him. And in that sense, then you must always be beholden to him and always be sure that he's fine with the level you're at before you can move on to the next step. That's the most crippling kind of life anybody can live for themselves. So if you're a woman, break free from this idea of society and they think I should be this, they think I should be that. Of course, that's not to suggest that if you are all the way up there, be bossy and disregard people and walk all over men because you are bigger or better or whatever. Than if you have basic human principle, I mean human, what's the appropriate word? You should have some basic courtesies for the next person. Of course, basic respect, accord people respect, humility. Those are virtues that are non-negotiable, whether you are all the way up there or you are at the bottom of the ladder. It doesn't matter where you are. Of course, accord people that. And I guess if you're a woman in a certain high standing in terms of your work, it may come with temptations of wanting to be in control. If you're in a leadership role and you have to exhibit what the same society calls manly characteristics at work, if you are a woman and you are not conscious of it, you may apply it everywhere, including your relationships. So you must, of course, recognize that yes, I'm in control in my office, but when I come to relationships, I don't need to be in control all the time. I don't need to be bossy in my relationships because I'm bossy at work. I mean, you should be self-aware enough to recognize that different contexts require a different version of you. So it's not to suggest at all that this idea that if a woman is in high standing, she must be, sorry to say, bitchy, and she must be bossy and rude and mean to everybody. Maybe that is what the reality has become. I don't know if there's any statistics to back it. If that is the statistics, then of course those women need a reorientation where they need to learn basic human courtesy. But if it's simply because she's up there, that's those attributes are attributed to her. Sorry for the circling the tautology, but if it's simply because of that, then we have a big problem as a society. I mean, women are largely responsible for raising the next generation. Of course, the men count, of course, the men, but if you look at the amount of time averagely mothers spend with children, we need women who are open-minded, who are they're sharp. They know what the essence of life is, what the values of life should be, and should be passing that on to the children who are coming. You don't need properly low-minded women raising people like that, because that is what will generate human beings who are shaking in themselves and don't know what to do with themselves and have to step on the next person in order to rise up. So I have a lot of scattered thoughts around this idea of what a woman should be or shouldn't be, etc. But I think that ultimately, be self-aware, forget about society, but by all means have basic courtesy in life, and be self-aware enough to recognize that what you've been graced with can become a hindrance for you if you don't understand that different contexts require different versions of yourself. But by all means, if you're a woman on this call, go for the highest you can go for.
Thank you. Thank you, AJ. So, AJ, before I move to Ken, can you give me your final words before we move on to our next session? When I give Ken another question, we won't leave here right now because he has a lot to say. We also have a lot
you
to
should
say.
allow
So,
him. I enjoy his answers and his
yes,
examples
yes,
and his stories.
yes,
He has
yes,
a very interesting sense of humor.
yes,
Um,
yes,
I,
yes.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to conclude on all of this. I think it's been an interesting conversation. I think some of the issues may need a bit more time to delve a bit deeper into. But God bless you guys for the work you're doing. I think that you're doing the Lord's work, for lack of a better word, expression. And I'm always humbled, always honored to share this platform with you. And it was a pleasure meeting you, Ken. I think you're very interesting. I'm hoping to meet you on other platforms. But all the best to you guys too with the launch and the rest of the program. Thank you.
Thank you, AJ. Ken, your final words, please.
My final words, thank you, AJ, for the compliment. I equally enjoyed listening to you. Wonderful feedback, very, very intellectual. I mean, again, very good. Job chapter 32, verse 9, again, those who subscribe to scripture, it says, sometimes the elders are not wise, and sometimes the aged do not understand justice. NIV says that it's not only the old who are wise, not only the aged who understand what is right. Of all what ages, I'm doing a whole research on that. I'm changing the narrative and define a lot of illogical proverbs and customs we have in our culture. That the adult is always right. It's a penini akola nidi for. It does not make sense. One time I told my uncle that female genital mutilation was culture. Didn't make sense. It was culture though. By the fact that it's culture, does it make sense? I mean, we have some narratives, and someone actually said that I learn from the bad advice I give to people, because I mean, we are always depend on what has always been so, and we are following up the same trend. So I believe that we should change the narrative in all the things that we've discussed. Whatever thing that you want to do, you must be deeply convicted if you're a Christian. In the research that I'm doing, one of the example is that whoever invented the parachute should have been deeply convicted that this thing should work. It wasn't something that had ever been invented. Society had never come up about anything about a parachute. He had the idea, and like, I'm going to go for it. Whoever invented the airplane, the Wright brothers, they should have been deeply convicted, because it was changing the narrative. About it, then we did not have airplanes. Whoever invented the ship, knowing that anything that you put on a river should sink, should also have been deeply convicted. So in psychology, you have terms like social conformity, sensory adaptation, that talks about societal pressure and conform to society and all of that. But if you want to change the narrative, my close remarks is you must be deeply convicted that despite what everybody is saying, this is what I believe should be the right thing. And conviction is different from perception and intuition, which is quite funny. They are not too sure. When you get to a level of conviction, whether the woman is older, she's smarter, she's richer. For me, like this, at a point in time, I realized that if I'm this age who has a PhD, it does not shake me. I know what I'm worth. I know my knowledge. I know my confidence. The PhD does not shake me anywhere. I can go around with her any place. And I know that her PhD does not intimidate me. But for somebody, the PhD might intimidate them. So you must get to that level of conviction where you know that whether it's relationship, whether it's career, whether it's purpose, whether it's define the advice of your parents, because that also counts. Your parents, you may think your parents are always right, or define the advice of a relative or society or your boss. It boils down to conviction. Thank you very much. My final remarks.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, AJ. This has been very insightful. I wish we could go on, but if not for the time, I wish we could go on. And we are hoping that we can get both of you together again so that we can tackle the other questions. People sent a lot of questions, but we're not able to touch on quite a number of them. But thank you so much. This has been very insightful. God bless you each, and we pray that the sacrifices you had to make to be here, God will replenish you in all the ways that you have lost or you have sacrificed for us. Thank you so much. So I'm handing over to our founder.